You don't want to stand up and get some.
That's true, I forgot about that.
You're standing in the shade.
I got stocking.
I know, it's like hard to stop. Sorry, I try to be like,
Well, but I don't think that was the point.
that's awesome.
Well,
I like
well,
that's so funny.
Right. Jumping out of your chest.
yeah.
I work at a school
Yeah, it's like everything else.
I know.
Yeah, I miss the
You've been a part.
No.
Mama.
All right, welcome to the August 15th Village Board meeting. If you could please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I would like a motion to open the public hearing for the reduction of maximum height applicable in the B1 zone from 4 floors to 3.5 floors.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody have any questions regarding this local law? Okay. Not hearing any. I would like to close the, get a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I need a motion to adopt the seeker.
Oh, good, yeah. We want to just go through
The
environmental
seeker and
assessment
then-
form first, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to run us through
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I mean, there's really not, part one was filled out, and then we skipped over questions 2 through, right to part 2 because it's a statute. And going through the criteria, there's very little environmental impact on this, so it's kind of, I didn't see anything in any of the questions that would be answered that would trigger an environmental issue, since you're actually improving, the environment. I think that's the point, to make the visual aspects of the village more palatable in the future. So, yeah. So if you
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the seeker, or adopt the seeker?
I'll make that motion.
as a neg deck, and the resolution
deck.
is in the package, yeah.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and can I get a motion to adopt this local law?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, well, I'm guessing that most of you are here for the next two local laws, so just to start things out, since COVID, we have seen a higher use of our public spaces, which is great. But it made us take a look at our local laws regarding the use, so that we can manage the use and to protect the village and protect public safety. So the peddler's permit has been on the books since 1978. We had some concerns and complaints brought to us regarding these companies going around door to door in our neighborhoods soliciting. The peddler's permit is on the books to allow the village to vet the company, make sure it's a true and company and has all of its legitimate insurance and whatnot, so that our residents can feel comfortable having that company knock on the door. So basically it was taking a look at an older permit that needed its insurance and references to state law brought up to today. So that's the peddler's permit. And as far as the assembly permit, again, we've had some instances where two different people wanted to use the green or the bandstand, and so we just wanted a way to monitor the use and protect the village and the public safety, and determine whether or not our highway department would need to do a road closure, whether our police department would need to, or our sheriffs would need to do traffic control. Basically, we are trying to prevent disruption to traffic, whether it's our roads or our sidewalks. So the assembly permit is tripped when there are going to be 25 or more people. It's just a permit process.
If it's gonna obstruct
Okay.
something.
Right, so.
It's not an absolute.
So on these two, I know there's been some feelings and shared on Facebook and whatever, so we are not going, we're gonna open the public hearings, but we're not gonna close them tonight to allow people to have more time to thoroughly vet them and bring their concerns forward, so.
Mayor, are we gonna do a public hearing for one at a time?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, we'll open it up and then we'll keep that open, and then once comments and then move on to the next one. So can I have a motion?
Could I just,
Okay, sure.
before you open the public, I mean, I just a few things that I think it's important for people to be aware of, the board as well. This was done, the backdrop of this law was to make sure that the public has the right to, because the public does have the right to use the public, it's a public space, it's actually held in trust for the public. And that cannot be, that's a fundamental First Amendment right that cannot be infringed upon by the government. And that includes the village of Pawling. It's for speech and religious activities, political activities and the like. Those rights are not absolute, but there are the limitations on time, basically time, place, and manner that the village can regulate. That there has to be a reason, such as preventing violence or ensuring public safety or avoiding disruption of traffic and keeping streets and sidewalks open and clear, and avoiding interference with the rights of others to enjoy historical and culturally significant landmarks, and as the mayor said, regulating competing uses. So, and then the other thing that is important to keep in mind, and we've tried to do this with the law, is the recognition that when people are involved in exercising their First Amendment rights, as opposed to having a parade, or a farmer's market, something that's not necessarily commercial, because if you're gonna use the public space, it's gotta be for a public purpose. That doesn't mean that people, you know, can't go and speak and picket and do whatever they're gonna do. When they put, like, they put something in the ground, or a tent or a fence or some, you know, something that's going to potentially have an interference, that's one of the things that triggers the need for a permit. Or if it's just a parade or an assembly, a situation where there could be an issue of disruption of traffic and making sure there's enough police protection. If there's gonna be 2 or more groups, and they might be competing groups, everybody has a right to speak their piece, but it may be in certain cases prudent to have designated areas for the 2 groups so that the public peace is not jeopardized.
Okay. So can I get a motion to open up the peddlers and soliciting's public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anybody have any, can you please state your name and address?
Yes, I'm sorry. Brian Klingerman. I'm one of the local ministers here at the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses on Route 22. And you've likely seen our cart that we tend to set up over by to the right of McKinney and Doyle. For the purpose of really doing a community service, trying to bring some good news and some hope to the community, et cetera. We're obviously concerned about how the proposal might affect us so that we can do the right thing moving forward.
One thing I can let you know is that's not village property where you've been setting up. That's private property.
Okay?
That little mini park is not village property. So it's
Okay.
not actually public
Didn't know
property in the
that. So-
sense it's privately owned.
Okay, so do we need to see anybody else about that, or? Okay. Again, our goal is is a community service, not to, we're certainly not peddling, we're certainly not.
You wouldn't be subject to, if you're on
No.
private property, and again, if you or your folks are, you know, going around and doing your thing, you're allowed to do that. I mean, they can't, you know, nobody wants to stop it and shouldn't, so.
So as long as you're not blocking a sidewalk where someone can't pass.
Oh, we saw that. Our people, we give them good training to be very, very careful, not to be any kind of a problem to the
Yeah.
community, so.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure we.
There hasn't been a problem that I'm aware of.
Okay, good, okay. Just to let, in the interest of not taking your time, on the next hearing, should we put our hand up and talk again, or does that affect us? I guess it does because of it being private property.
Yeah, it doesn't affect you.
Good enough. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thanks.
Anybody else have a concern or a question or comment? Can you please state your name and address, please?
Drew Montgomery, 13 Quaker Hill Road. If you are vetting people who may be soliciting business door to door, how are we gonna know they've been vetted?
Well, you can ask them if they have a permit, but we have had concerns where we've had multiple different types of companies going door to door in our neighborhoods that have no vehicles or anything to identify who they are, so
Are you gonna post who's been vetted and approved?
yeah, we could certainly put that out on the website, yes.
Well, it's also, if you're a permit holder, if you're doing commercial solicitation, you're supposed to have that on your
them.
person. So if you're a resident and somebody comes to your door, you could ask them. I mean, again, this is not for somebody who's acting for, you know, religious purposes or whatever. That
No, I
doesn't
understand it's,
apply.
for
So,
your
yeah, that's an
roof
exempt.
or whatever.
So typically, these different or different folks that are soliciting will come into the community and like the mayor said, they don't necessarily announce or they don't have a vehicle. And they prey particularly on elderly people to try to get them for sign up for things that they don't need. And if we become aware of that, we let the authorities know, and it stops. They know
Temporarily.
that they are supposed to have, any peddler going into any community to solicit, to do those sorts of activities, knows that they have to have a permit to do that, but they don't go through the process because they don't, you know, what they're doing is not necessarily ethical.
Okay, I would say that not all of them know that they should have a permit.
Well, a lot of these quote companies and organizations that
Maybe
do
you
this
never
sort
heard.
of thing, try to solicit, they come to your door to try to sell you something, a new roof or a new windows or new, you know,
Or
or
alarm system
oil
or-
or alarm system, or they know.
Okay.
Any other questions? Can you please state your name and address?
Sure, I'm Carol Compton, 5 Spruce Street. I just arrived, so apologies if you've already answered this question. Would the soliciting include the demonstration, the demonstration, is that the word I want? The giving out of Tom cards or political literature at any place in the village?
No.
No, okay.
No, unless you're set up in a public area, sort of as a dedicated, you know, you may have missed this, but if you've got some kind of equipment, tent, gazebo kind of a thing.
Right.
But no, if you're just going around handing out, I mean, that's a constitutionally protected activity that, you know. so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion? Oh, no, we're gonna keep that open.
Yeah.
All right, so can I get a motion to open the public hearing for the parades, public assembly, and use of public areas proposed law?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So this has been an amendment of our current Village Green and Assembly permit that we have right now, so.
Can I just say, I mean, we kind of covered some of, I mean, I was sort of talking more about, honestly, the peddlers thing is sort of a standard ordinance that you see in most municipalities, and technically, that's what the public hearing was about just a minute ago, but most of the conversation was about the public assembly and use of public facilities permit, so.
Okay.
Before we field questions, can I ask one?
Yeah.
So, Dave, I was just a little confused. For the permit of public assembly is 25 or more.
If it's gonna interfere with traffic, or
Right.
some other kind of public safety concern, so it's not necessarily if people are, it's a kind of a facts and circumstances thing. There could be a situation where people are going, you know, walking down the street, 25 feet, it wouldn't make sense to have a permit for that, but if it's, you know, in a specific area where it, you know, it's tightly
Right, if they're gonna set up.
occupied, yeah. So,
And the other one is the use of public facility, which is over 10.
well, only, the 10 requirement is only the gazebo and the war memorial.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, it's 25, because the thought on that is that those areas are small. And, you know, you'd wanna have, if people are there, whether it's to give a speech or to, you know, do something from a religious perspective, or some political, you know, that becomes an issue of sort of, you know, that maybe that other members of the public, you know, that the board would wanna sort of weigh in on that, I think, in terms of whether to give a permit for that use
Okay.
of those areas, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right, so does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Yes, can you please state your name and address?
Good evening, Tom Rose, Sunset Avenue. And I stand to oppose to the creation of this version of the proposed law that adds section 59 to the village code. Proposed law, while purporting to support free speech, seems to do the opposite by creating a mechanism where free assembly and therefore free speech can be denied. Taken as a whole, it asserts that in the village, what's known elsewhere as the right of assembly is reduced to a mere privilege to be granted or withheld by the village government. It appears to completely ban spontaneous demonstrations in public areas, imposing severe punishment by making the exercise of a constitutional right subject to fine and/or imprisonment unless an application is approved by the mayor or the board, giving those entities the right of rejection. This doesn't fit the definition of spontaneity. By requiring the special permit, the village limits the unrestricted use of the most appropriate location for assembly, the gazebo, to 10 persons. And even that permit would require a 60-day notification. Many local municipalities defer on state law of assembly. I see no reason why Pawling should be different, encumber itself with the law's maintenance, and risk the possible legal expense of defense. However, residents with whom I've discussed these issues believe the village board is determined to enact the proposal. While I believe this is unwise, if this is truly the case, I believe certain provisions should be reviewed and amended. And there are questions I believe you are unable to answer at the time. Who's accountable when there is no applicant? Who determines when the threshold of public assembly is reached? In short, who gets to count to 10 or 25? And who gets to call the police when the count gets to 11 or 26? And is the 11th person arrested, or all 11? The threshold at which the proposed law would be enforced seems too low compared to other localities in the area which do have laws. In my opinion, a threshold of 50 would not be burdensome to the village. To that end, I propose the term public assembly be defined as 50 persons and the definition other assembly be removed in its entirety. The high minimum fine provides insufficient discretion to judges to provide leniency in case of an accidental infraction, further discouraging spontaneous expressions of speech. I propose the minimum fine be set at $100. Judges may increase the fine at their discretion should the need arise. The board has been given carte blanche to subsequently establish fees. Fees should be codified before their adoption. Strongly urge the board to reject the adoption of this proposed law, but if you are determined to enact it, I'd just like you to listen seriously to all the public comments presented tonight and consider appropriate adjustments. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just
Okay.
I mean, your comments are very thoughtful, and you know, you're obviously you know, it sounds like you know the law. You've looked at what some of the criteria are, and that's what the board. That's why this board is keeping this hearing open. You know, to make sure that, because the intent of this law is not to do what you're afraid of, and it can't. Because I agree with you that it is not worth it to enact a law that's going to end up being challenged, and you know, you want to be on the you want to be well on the right side of constitutionality. So you raise a lot. The fee thing is something that we've been talking about, and you know, for when it's First Amendment stuff, it's not a bad idea not to have a fee. You know, and the number 50 is one that, you know, the Supreme Court has talked about in cases. So you know, I'm sure the board will take all of your comments under consideration. So.
Thanks, and I appreciate the fact that you are going to leave the hearing open. As I had suggested, make appropriate adjustments and let's take another look at it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Roberts, 33 Elm Street. Within the last year, we had, I guess you would call it a car truck convoy that came through the village and stopped in the village and then had a rally. And they took up at least every parking space in the village. I don't know if they blocked traffic. I didn't go as soon as I heard about it. I didn't want to get in the middle of that. So I'd like to know, within the ordinance, is there something about cars and trucks as opposed to people? Because that is something that's been going on in Dutchess County and a lot of places. So I would like that to be taken into consideration. What happens when that happens?
Well, you know, disruption of traffic and disruption of people. I mean, if people are creating a nuisance, you know, honking horns or things like that, or they're blocking traffic, that's exactly what that's what I was talking about with the time, place, and manner, you know, the public safety and order piece of this. So those are good. That's one of the reasons why the board is considering this kind of regulation, because it's not about, and you're absolutely right about the spontaneity and not squelching that, because that's not something that should be done. You know, there's gotta be a mechanism, but on the other hand, if it's spontaneity that's creating, you know, a nuisance for other people, that should be regulated and can be regulated, so.
So I just wonder if that can be included, not just people, but vehicles.
It is, I mean, traffic is a big,
I
is,
think
you
that's
know,
what we
one of the
meant by
criteria,
parade.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so
one of the criteria
that
is if
would be a
you're,
parade.
if you're interfering with traffic, you're creating, you know, they don't allow, you know, bullhorns, that's one of the things, and that kind of thing, so.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
point.
Thank you. We had one in the back and then you, or did somebody not in the back? Okay, go ahead. If you can state your name and address.
Susan Raymond, Sunset Avenue. First of all, thank you for deciding to not ram this through. We watched the Zoom meeting 2 weeks ago, and it was apparent that you were going to put it through tonight, come hell or high water. So I'm glad that you are listening to us. I have read the proposed chapter 59, and I have some serious misgivings and a slew of questions. I will only touch on a few. The definition of the public area leaves wide open the possibility that the board can expand that definition at their discretion, further limiting venues for people to assemble if the mayor and/or board disagree with them. The application for an assembly permit has a list of onerous requirements, including one requiring that the applicant submit an estimate of the number of spectators. Really? How is anyone going to know beforehand? This one feels incredibly disingenuous, with the potential for fines for a major miscalculation. Also, if the assembly permit is denied, there is no provision for a review, a discussion, no allowance for the petitioner to request a path to seek a reversal of said decision. Why does the request process for the UFP permit come with an application window of not less than 60 days to no more than 6 months? Why are you demanding at least 60 days to make a determination? This feels like a cushion of time to find someone else to fill that time and venue so you can deny someone if you don't like what they have to say. And the board reserves the right to add impediments like an additional insurance or indemnification requirement, which could be used randomly to make an application too pricey to pursue. Also, this proposal states that the board would have the right to determine whether an assembly promotes a public purpose, meaning they can use a nebulous, undefined reason to refuse a request if they disagree with the purpose or the message. This proposal, I think, would codify the board's right to deny a person or group their lawful constitutional rights to free speech and peaceful assembly at any time if they do not like or agree with them. Down towards the bottom, Article 59.14 states that the Village Green and the Public Assembly Events Policy adopted by the board on June 2nd, 2014 is repealed, but there is no copy of or link to said document, and it has not proven discoverable by many people. Why has that not been made available so we know what went before? I have more questions and objections, but in the interest of allowing others to express their thoughts and opinions, I will leave you with this. We deserve better. This village demands better. The Bill of Rights and the First Amendment mandate better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. The insurance requirement is something that the only time insurance can be required is if the organization that's sponsoring the event already has insurance. And the reason for that is that it's not permissible to require that. It's unconstitutional. It might chill speech. And also the public purpose provision only applies to the use of things like the gazebo and the war memorial. I mean, that's the intent. It's not intended to apply where there's just a general people speaking and exercising their right of religion and the like. So, but those, you know, your points are all worthy of
Well,
consideration.
the gazebo is very convenient and central place that does not impede traffic.
Right.
There have been assemblies there, and
But what if
we've
two
had
people, what
mixed
if two
results.
assemblies show up at the same time? I mean, that's the reason for, you know, again, it's a very, you know, that place, it's a very limited space, and it's something that is, you know, very prominent part of the village, and it's not to, the intent of this is not to pick favorites or to exclude people, it's just to make sure that there's a process. And, you know, your thing about, and I think this gentleman mentioned the spontaneity, that's important. And there's gotta be a mechanism in this law, and I think we have to work harder to address that, and that'll be, you know, I'm sure the board will look at that. So, everything you're saying is spot on in terms of what the board cannot, you know, pick favorites or choose, you know, who they like or don't like. That would, you know, it wouldn't be right, but it also would be stupid, because you're gonna end up with a lawsuit, so.
One of the things too, that now with the new website, one of the things we wanna do is after, if we continue on this path with the permit, once somebody has a permit approved, it would go on the community page of the website so that you know when events are happening and where they're happening. So that if someone else is looking to use the bandstand or the green, they'll see that on such and such day, there's already a group using it. Just like the farmer's market has the block out of Saturdays, every Saturday from 9 to 1, we certainly wouldn't be allowing somebody else to get a permit for the green. And it would be under the farmer's market control as to whether or not they allow another group to join them. Once they have a permit, it's under their control as to who also utilizes the green if they choose to.
And I would mention that our intent certainly is not to prevent anyone from using. I don't think anybody that ever has applied for a permit for any purpose for the green has been denied that I'm aware of. And that would not be our intent to do that.
It was just simply to manage the use so that we didn't have two groups wanting to use it, and to make sure that we were protecting the village and the village residents. So that we're not blocking traffic, or that we're not having something happening that's gonna impede, so that was the intent. Yes, can you state your name and address, please?
My name's Jennifer Tiso Garvey, I live at 15 Fairway. So I'm gonna amend what I was gonna say, because two things came up in regards, and can you guys go around and tell me who you are? Because this is my first time being here, so I don't know like who I'm speaking to. I know you're Lori Taylor, right?
Correct.
And Jennifer Osborne maybe, or, okay. I just don't know who everyone is.
I'm Jerry Lacasio, a village trustee.
Dan Peters, village trustee.
John Burwaker, village trustee.
Dave Daniels, village attorney.
Dan Stone, village engineer.
Okay, thank you. Two things, before I say something. So just to be clear, there's two permits that we're talking about, correct? UPF, which is the use of the gazebo, and then the assembly permit, which is the 25. So if you were to use.
It's not just the use, the use of public facilities includes the green and the
Okay,
gazebo.
but what's
and
the
warm
10 and the 25 thing?
So the 10 only applies for a group that wants to have a dedicated use of the war memorial or the gazebo.
Right, so if you were to say you were to have an event that it was including the gazebo and like the green on side, you would be filling out two permits essentially, or no?
No,
Just
then
one?
it would be the green, and it would encompass the,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wasn't sure if there were like two separate ones.
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
The second thing that came up when you were talking, you're saying about insurance. You're saying that insurance would only be required of a group if a group had insurance?
Right.
Okay.
For the public assembly, you know, because that's.
We had Pride back in June, and we were charged insurance, and we had to go through another
our
way in order to
application.
get insurance. So I'm just offline, I'd love to know why we were charged for insurance.
Our application currently, right now, does
We don't
require.
Were you using the green?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the green is like a dedicated place, and if you sort of have exclusive use of it,
Mm-hmm.
then there can be insurance required. If you're having if people are just, you know, want to come and, you know, speak and march and, you know, exercise their rights.
Okay.
You can't stop people from doing that under the guise of insurance.
Right, but if you're having an event,
Yeah, if you're having an event and you're basically taking over the green and other people are gonna be excluded, you know, that's
No.
where it's a different, that's
That
where we.
seems like a weird gray area though, like, I feel like, do you require insurance or you don't, so it's like at the discretion of.
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
That's all.
Great, so, a couple of things that I wanted to bring up that I don't wanna like talk on other ones, but I think, a big thing that I found was when I read through the document, my first kind of reaction was, what do other towns do? Like, what do other towns, villages do? So I did research, I looked at other areas near us in Dutchess County, and then a couple of friends live in Putnam County, so I got some numbers there. But it just seems that the number 25 is incredibly low when you compare it to other towns and villages, so I was kind of curious how that number became the number.
I
It's a
looked
placeholder.
at a couple of villages in Dutchess County and they both had the 25 spot.
I haven't found any, so,
The village of
so
Fiscal
Millbrook,
and Millbrook County.
Millbrook, has 50 before you require a permit. They have a much smaller population than us, but, then Media allows up to 350 people before requiring a permit. Dover allows up to 2,500 people, which I think is probably not safe, but that's my take. Patterson allows up to 500, so these are towns nearby that allow a lot more wiggle room, I guess is what I'm saying, before you would need to require a permit.
The other thing, when you're comparing a town to what we have here, let's even just use the town of Pawling. They have the big huge park, they have large pavilions with the grass area around it. We don't have that, we just have our little green, basically. So that's a difference. The Dover one, there's a huge park with a big huge pavilion again. Town of LaGrange, same thing, big huge park, big huge pavilion, so they can absorb large numbers.
Okay.
We're, you know, a little small. Not
Sure.
to say that,
So is
I'm
Millbrook,
hearing you
and
that we
Millbrook
should.
starts at
But that being
50.
said, that number, it's a good point, and it's
Yeah.
something that we have thought about, and it is a gray area, so I
Yep.
think, you know, be patient and, you know,
Okay.
that's been
Yeah.
raised
I
twice
have
now.
another question. Thank you. Why is there insurance and bond? There was language that made it seem like those were two separate things.
Some of the things that wouldn't be covered by insurance would be a bond, you know.
Right, so there's
But
two.
not for a public assembly. That would not apply.
Okay, so what would trigger
Well, it would be
needing
for,
bond?
like, again, if somebody is using the gazebo and they, you know, there's a cleanup or something happens where there's expenses that are being incurred
Sure.
by the village, and again, it has to be tailored to what the situation is.
But
you know.
insurance would not be sufficient enough? Bond is needed as well?
The board can waive, I mean, you know, again, it's, those are things that, you know, facts and circumstances, but, you know, we'll look at that too, that's not
Okay.
bad, that's not a bad point, so.
To wrap up, the answers that I appreciate what this report, but I guess my concern is that as we're talking about this, I feel like a lot of the responses are, well, maybe we wouldn't need it. And it feels very like up to the discretion of folks. And so I guess for people in the
Can't be.
public, but that's what it's coming
Well,
across as
that's
a
a
little
good-
bit. Do you know
but
what I
it
mean?
can't be.
Like, I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
accusatory, I'm just saying like,
No.
it's like, you need insurance in order to hold something, but only if your group has insurance already. Okay, but your group doesn't have insurance, but we're still gonna charge you insurance to use the green. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
but
it
that comes
seems
right
like
from
it's.
that comes right from a Supreme Court case. So, I mean, that was where the line was drawn by the court, so it seemed like a reasonable, I mean, to me, it's kinda like,
In
all right, if
regards-
you already have the insurance, it's not gonna cost you anything, why not? You know, if that means you're a group that probably is doing things on a bigger scale. On the other hand, if you're a small organization, you can't require insurance because to do so would chill First Amendment rights.
Okay.
So I don't think that's subjective, I think that's.
Maybe we have to clarify where they apply, when they apply, and how they apply.
I think that that's necessary, because I think if you want the public to trust you, then you need to be super clear about when these things are how they're decided, what triggers certain things, you know, at what point, I guess, somebody else was speaking, who's counting? Like, at what point are we gonna be like, okay, this is the 11th person? So I think when we put in, it felt like when I was reading this, that there were times where this language was incredibly vague. And I think that makes people feel like, what are they trying to pull the wool over our eyes? That's what I'm getting from that. And so I'm just trying to be honest and tell you guys, like, it feels very wish-washy to me. It feels like not clear enough. And for me, I know what you're saying is like, we couldn't do that, right? You're like, we couldn't do that. That's a First Amendment thing. We can't do that as the board. But like, maybe the next person in that gets voted in would, and they would have this law on the books.
You have to have a reason. I mean, you have to have a reason, you know, and if you don't have if you, like, somebody was talking about a rally, you know, a car rally or truck rally that's, you know, that I don't know what this one did, but if you had one that was gonna block traffic, you know, you want, and again, you may not, maybe they don't apply for the permit, but at least you could then say to them, look, you don't have a permit, you need one, you're blocking traffic, you're disrupting the public with your noise or whatever. So on the other hand, if a group comes in and they're not doing any of that, and they're not, there's no legitimate basis, this ordinance requires a reason. So it's you know, I don't know, I mean, and that was the idea, was not to do what you're afraid it might do.
We can't have the sheriff enforce or control something if we don't have the local law on the books for them to enforce. So, yes, this needs to be massaged, but it's a work in progress, and I'm thankful that you guys are here to point out the deficiencies or the question marks so that we can get to a place where hopefully everybody's comfortable. Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Harvey Metkovsky of Crescent Drive and Homes. Listening, I'm not going to repeat any of the thoughtful comments made before and waste everybody's time. But sitting through this, all the conversations, it seems to me that this law was rushed through. There were comments such as too much discretion, the vagueness of the law, the amount. What was the genesis of this law? Who sat down and thought that there was a need for this law, in addition to the constitutional guarantees in the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution? It just seems that this is a solution looking for a problem. Was somebody aware, or in the past, had there been a demonstration or a group that came in that caused, blocked the sidewalks or caused traffic congestion?
You just heard about one.
Yeah, we just heard about one.
What?
We just heard about one.
The
convoy.
Well, okay, but that seemed to be spontaneous, and everybody here, rather than getting.
It was not spontaneous.
Well, no, I mean, it was planned, but it was, it's not something that we want to permit. But to speak, okay.
This wasn't being rushed. The way a local law works is we introduced it at our last meeting, and then you open a public hearing to hear the public. It's a draft that we have that we're working with, and it's gonna definitely be massaged with all of these comments. This is how we work, and as I had stated before, we already have a village green and assembly permit. I understand, I guess people weren't able to see it, but there is one that we had since 2014. So I mean, and when you amend a local law, it creates a new law. You don't just amend it, it creates a new law.
Okay, at the last meeting, that law,
it was introduced.
I assume all of the village board members had copies of it, so it didn't come from heaven all of a sudden and it was dropped down. There had to be thought that preceded your last meeting, and it just seems to me that there wasn't enough thought and enough debate on it. I still don't understand the genesis. Give me your explanation. With all due respect, I don't buy it. Maybe I'm a conspiratorial mind. Hey, but there are times when someone is out to get you. Let me talk about an issue that's been bandied about, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I assume they had a permit.
Yes.
Did they have insurance?
Yes.
Oh, could you tell me who sponsored that?
It's the Chamber of Commerce.
The Chamber of Commerce sponsored? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, all right, because there have been questions about that. Okay, I'm not going to repeat any of the other comments made, but My main problem still is, the vagueness and too much discretion on the, part of the, mayor and the,
Okay,
and the
that's-
village board.
Yep,
And,
that's been heard.
that's really unacceptable, so, okay.
Anybody else have a comment or question or concern? Can you please state your name and address?
Drew Montgomery again, Quaker Hill Road. If you fill out the application for your group or whatever, will it be voted on by the board?
Yes, that's our process, always been our process.
May I ask why this should be voted on by the board? If you fill out the proper forms and the time is available, why should it be a decision of the board whether one group should come and another group shouldn't?
Because if you have a single person making the decision, you know, there's not less chance for discussion and, you know, consideration of the issue. It's really it was intended to address partly the concern. I'm not saying it addresses it completely, but it was to mitigate the possibility of having a single person responsible for making any kind of subjective decision.
But it wouldn't be what I'm saying is it wouldn't be a decision. It would be
No,
you filled out the form.
No, it is a decision, because if let's say that it's gonna cause a riot. I mean, I'm not, you know, again, there's two groups and
How
they're
do you
gonna.
know if something's gonna cause a riot?
Yeah.
Again, you don't know until I'm using extreme example to, come on, Drew, I'm
It's gotta
talking
be
about.
possible.
I'm talking
If
about.
I apply to the building department to get a roof, nobody votes on whether, they should maybe, but nobody votes on whether I should get a roof or not get a roof.
So for instance, when you come before the board to present the idea for a farmer's market, which will consume that area of the village for the summer, it's presented as an idea, as a thought. Is this a good idea? How is it gonna work? What are the vendors gonna be like? This and that and the other thing, and that's presented to the village board as a concept. And you were present, like, for instance, when that was done. And there are other similar situations where, you know, somebody has an idea for an event that, like the farmer's market, which consumes the green for the whole summer. And it's an absolutely wonderful event, and we all enjoy it and love it, but that comes before the village board
But that's a
as a
very
concept.
different event. That's not the farmer's market is not a freedom of speech issue.
It's an assembly.
It's not an assembly.
It's-
It's a commercial.
No, it's a use of-
venture.
It's a use or
It's a use of the
The
space.
farmer's
So,
market has insurance.
so if somebody wants to come, say, from 9 to 1 on some Saturday during the summer, and we've actually had these conflicts, and use the space or use another space in the village that may affect the space that you already.
Does it take the whole board to decide whether?
What?
Well, if it's gonna just be me, you're gonna accuse me
It wouldn't
of
be you.
making
It would be the clerk.
I don't feel
No, it's
comfortable making
not
that
it's
decision.
not a ministerial decision, though. I mean,
Is it a decision?
if as Dan said, there was a situation where a group was already using the space and another group wanted to come in and use that space or use space right next door, I think there needs to be some judgment. The board is, runs.
Well, wouldn't it be first come, first served?
And
Well,
there's
yeah,
been
but if you don't have a permit, and you have, you just
No,
have
I'm talking about
ministerial.
getting a permit.
Yeah, but it may not be so clear, you see what I'm saying? Somebody may be,
Or say somebody now sets up on the green on a Saturday morning at, say, 8 o'clock.
But
And
somebody wants to be in compliance.
I'm just saying, there could
Somebody
be
wants to
somebody
be in-
setting up at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, set up a couple of tents, wanting to be vendors, and you, as the farmer's market, have the permit for 9 to 1.
That's a very different kind of permit, or it should be. This is public assembly of.
And use.
if it's public assembly, It is different. I agree with, it is different. It's, one thing is a, you know, a charitable activity, and it's not free speech. And this law, it has a lot of safeguards for the free speech, religion kind of a thing that are not in place for the commercial activities. And a lot of the comments that have been made tonight, you know, will be discussed, and they'll probably, if it gets passed, there'll be more.
Many of these were gatherings of people are on events that occur and are reacted to very quickly within a day or two, or maybe on the same day. So how do you put it through a vote?
That doesn't, that actually goes, that's why we had the mayor decide that if there's good cause because of spontaneity, and there is a reference to that in the ordinance,
So we could
then
allow
you can move quickly.
the event to happen.
So.
But I
and that-
don't see an assembly of people trying to apply for the right to assemble as any different if it's all about freedom of speech, not about a commercial. not
Again,
about a
it
car
has to,
show
there has to
or a
be, in
farmer's
order for
market.
to trigger the permit when it involves free speech, there has to be some risk of disruption to the public order. You can't just require a permit for a bunch of people that are gonna walk through the village and, you know, exercise their right to speak, or whatever. You can't. And the village, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, you know, and that's why the ordinance specifically says there's gotta be some.
I'm saying it's a dangerous
Yeah,
path
I
to
don't
go
disagree,
down,
I don't disagree that
denying
it's a
people
slippery,
their
it's a
freedom
slippery
of
slope,
speech.
and it has to be done very carefully, and it's gotta be clear that there are real reasons, when there's constitutional rights involved, you know, you have to have really a compelling interest to shut somebody down, you know, but as long as, you know.
And that has never happened, and I don't think it ever will. I mean, that.
Hey.
No one ever stole the president's passports.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
The fact that it never happened is no excuse to have a law.
Harvey, we have other people with their hands up, so please, let's be respectful. Steve, you wanna state your name and address?
Steve Holder, Oak Shadow Drive. First of all, thank you very much. I certainly have never been short on criticism. I want to congratulate you. This is probably the best meeting I've ever been to. You're being very giving with your time. And also congratulations, in case people have missed it, on passing an important law today about the 4-story height. And I believe your solicitation law is an excellent law. A little rough around certain edges. But I think the issue here is one that is solvable. And what I would say to you is you've made a commitment to look at this, and you've pointed out some really dangerous areas and agreed that they were dangerous. When I first came here, I was suspicious and thought, oh, I hope this doesn't evolve into a Democrat thing or political thing. I was happy to see that my good friend Colleen Snow, who's not a Democrat, told me in writing that she was against this law, and she told all of us, which is great. I think the reason, I don't want to put words in her mouth, that people have this reticence is because of some of the broadness that is easily fixed. And I'll turn your attention towards a couple of things as examples of what can be fixed when you brush through this. So the first is the definition of fixture, for example. Now, the definition of fixture, Dave, is if you don't mind me talking to you, is extraordinarily broad. And what it basically means is there's an opportunity for my friend Mr. Masello or Mr. Bernard to be walking with a placard that says Blue Lives Matter or the NRA and be shut down. And so it's easy for us to take a quick look at these things and see what can we do to avoid the slippery slope. Another example is, and so that these scenarios of, well, it could cause violence, don't come into question. Another example I'll give you is that permits can be denied based on someone's previous history. Now, there's at least one person I know in this room who was, pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of trespassing because they protested a war that maybe wasn't so popular, even back then, with people here. That's not what we want. And this young woman here has said, we don't know, right, what can happen. Now, Dan, you're a fine man who I do business with, and I have a personal like for you, but things that have never happened before happen. And what we need to do when creating our laws I believe, and I think what this conversation reflects, is to make sure that no harm can happen first. And that doesn't just mean safety. So I would urge you to look at the exemption clause itself, a clause that doesn't exist in other local laws, even though other villages have it. I would urge you to look at the appeals section. I would urge you to look at the definitions of things like fixture, and, you know, even the definition of public spaces, because you've taken one public street, Albemarle Road, and you've said, well, that's not a place you can congregate, but that will in fact be the very front of our village hall once you're done with your fine work of re-articulating how the village hall is spent. So what I would urge is for people in this room to send their comments to the clerk or the mayor, and to take a serious and hard look at these. And at the end of them, take a look and say, in the aggregate, do we actually need this at all? Or can we be like Millerton and Red Hook and Tivoli and many other villages which choose not to have this law? So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Anyone else? I'm gonna try to get new people, please. Can you please state your name and address?
Yes, Jill Norgan, Bundy Hill. I wondered whether in your survey of what the different towns have done with respect to this issue, you also found out to whom applications are made and then who makes the decision. Is it common to have an elected board or individual make the final decision, except when it's some extremely contentious, or whether is it more common to have an administrative staff member be the person to receive the permit and then grant it? Do you know
Well, the
from the
ones I
survey
looked
you
at, the
did?
Village of Pawling, Village of Fiscal, both had where it was the board and or the mayor.
Okay, and you don't know about the others?
No.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, I will, under village law, the mayor is vested with the authority to issue permits, so that's the norm. The mayor can delegate to the board, so that's, you know, that was the thought.
That's a good comment. Rob Pfister, San Susan. I think some of the points that were being made about just one person allowing a certain event to happen. Let's say I want to show up with my buddies and have axe throwing on Wednesday night. We got 20 people. And Jerry loves axe throwing. Does that seem like a good idea? No, I'd probably get denied for getting a permit to set up down there an axe throw. But yeah, of course, the rest of the board says, no, that's a terrible idea. You can't axe throw down there with your friend. So, I mean, should there be oversight? I know that's a crazy example, but there could be along those lines where you have one person that loves knife show. Somebody wants to have a knife or gun show down here in the village. Somebody loves knives and guns, it's on the board. You're leaving it to that one person to make that decision. I think the fact that they all get to kind of weigh in on certain events, yes.
That's like, I'm sorry, but that is like the farmer's market or the car show. That's not a freedom of speech
Certain
event.
events,
It's not a
certain
freedom
events,
of,
maybe.
it's not that kind of event.
Drew, can we please let,
Sorry.
Sure. No, I was
speaking. Speaking to me.
So I was, I don't, of course, I give the response, but just on that end, it does seem to make sense to let the board review at least the application for that. Freedom of speech, whatever he's talking about as far as freedom of speech settings, of course, within reason, as long as there's not the potential for certain violence, like you want a Nazi rally in the village, of course, but yeah, along other lines, then yeah. Of course, freedom of speech.
Use that as an example.
That's all.
thank you. Joan, you had another
Oh,
comment?
just one question. When the car truck rally, convoy rally thing came to Pawling, did they have a permit to assemble in the village?
They did not.
They did not. So were they fined? Was anyone arrested?
There's no, we don't have a law. I mean, that.
Well, they didn't
that-
have a permit.
We don't have a law. Without, if
But
there's
you
no
said
law
we have
requiring a
to-
permit,
But aren't you supposed to have a permit?
With the law that
That's
we
what we're-
have right now is for the village green and
Okay.
assembly. So
There's
that's why
another-
we're broadening it to hopefully capture those scenarios.
So you
The
couldn't,
downtown
right
area.
now.
They were on the green. I mean,
Right
they-
now, unless you could establish a legal nuisance or disorderly conduct or whatever, disturbing the peace, you couldn't do anything about somebody who did that. you know, if you had a bunch of people coming down and, you know, like blocking arms and blocking traffic, you know, then there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's kind of yeah, so.
So we have a permit, but we don't require the permit right now?
We don't have a.
We don't have a
we
permit
don't
that
have-
addresses
We don't have a
that.
permit now, what?
We only have a permit for the green,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
Can we get a copy of, or can that somehow be put online so that we could see the one from 2014?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
State your name and
Marty
address.
Migan, 1 Aspenport. Am I hearing correctly that I can block traffic out here tomorrow, pull my car sideways into the road, and just nothing will happen to me?
I'll give you a ticket.
No, not necessarily. We can still call the sheriff, and the sheriff
Give me a
can
ticket.
make you unblock the road.
So I guess to Joan's point, was anybody called on that day? Okay,
I don't know.
all right. Because I'm not gonna do it, but obviously, it doesn't make any common sense just because we don't have a law that somebody can just block traffic. It makes no sense.
Yep.
Fred Bernard, just a point of clarification, I was a councilman in Yorktown for 11 years, and we never saw permits in front of our board because the police chief took care of that. So in a lot of municipalities that have a police force, a police chief is in charge of that. So in this case, the top official in the municipality would be charged with that. You choose to use the board instead of yourself as the arbiter of that, but most other municipalities would use a police chief to do that, and not, the board would never see those permits. And I think that's good, because you don't want, it seems political if a board approves, like Steve said, if it's a Blue Lives Matter or an NRA or a Black Lives Matter or, you know, so then people can point a finger at you and say, well, you denied it or you approved
Right.
it based on political
Well,
purposes.
just to be fair, we also
But that's-
had Black Lives Matters, had a parade or whatever you wanna call it through the village twice, and they didn't have a permit either, so there is events that have been happening, and so we're just trying to figure out a way through this, so, thank you, Greg. Okay, so we are leaving the public hearing open, certainly feel free to email, your comments, I'm gonna go with, you've already spoken once, so I'm just gonna go with the person behind.
Oh, Amy hasn't.
Oh, she hasn't,
No.
okay.
No.
Okay, go
I
on the
just have
front.
two quick, I just have two quick points.
You get to say your name and address?
Carol Compton, Spruce Street. One point is, I personally would have no problem if on a given day, you know, the end of June was a time that was ripe after Roe v. Wade was overturned for pro-choice and pro-life. I personally would have no problem with a pro-choice being on one side of the gazebo and a pro-life choice being on the other side of the gazebo, as long as it was orderly. And I believe that we could behave in an orderly fashion. So I don't think we should dismiss out of hand what if two groups want to assemble on a given day. That's number one. Number two is, how can we be assured that there will be some transparency in the way the decisions are made? Now, some decisions are just gonna be obvious. Stupid things are not gonna get approved. Dangerous things are not gonna get approved. But how
Okay,
can some
well,
transparency be
I can-
presented?
So for the village green and assembly permit that we currently have on the books, those applications are put in our packets and it goes out on our website before the meeting, and everybody can see it, and it's discussed at our meeting and voted on. So I think that's pretty transparent.
But also if somebody gets turned down for the wrong reasons, I mean, that's gonna, you know, that'll be very transparent, and I'm sure that the board will hear about that. And that, you know, that's to be avoided. I mean, you know, a bad decision that's where, yeah, so. But I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be standards, but I'm saying that also is sort of a check and balance, because if you do that once, you're.
You were next?
Yep.
Your name and
Amy
address?
Farrell, 22 Sheridan Drive. Can you clarify if I gather with 10 people and want to use the gazebo to express my views, and a couple more people join us? Do we need to move on to the green where there's more space, or is all that space considered the same space?
It's not. I mean, the idea was, and again, these numbers are up for discussion, but the idea was that if somebody is basically taking over that space, it's a very small,
right,
gazebo, and 10 was a number that it's been introduced as a possibility because it seemed like, it was starting to get to a point where you're probably gonna start to interfere with anybody else who might wanna use the gazebo. So, it doesn't have to be 10, but if somebody wanted to just do the same thing on the grass next to it, they can.
Okay,
And
so
if
then
it's-
we could just move
Yeah,
off
and then
the
if it's,
gazebo
again,
and.
people are just, if there's 25 people are just standing there, kind of, talking or, having a speech and not hurting anybody, you don't need a permit. I mean,
It's also, as long as everybody's getting along and there isn't a friction or a problem, nobody's gonna be out there and be the green police and say, you're now 12 instead of 10. It's just a way to manage things, and that number, again, just to repeat what Dave said, it's a fluid number, we're gonna figure out what works, or maybe it doesn't work. But it's, again, just a way to manage the situation. If all of a sudden it turns into, Roe versus Wade comes together at the bandstand and, a fight breaks out, well, then we gotta break it up, and then that's when we fall back to, okay, well, who has a permit and for how many or whatever. So it's, again, it's a draft, we're working on it, we'll keep it going, we'll keep the discussions going. Again, we're gonna keep the public hearing open. If you have any more comments, please email them in, or.
Can I just ask one more follow-up question? So, I guess I'm trying to just
You
make
just
sure.
need to say your name
Jen
again.
Garvey, Jen Tiso Garvey.
Sorry, just for
Fairway
people
Drive.
that are
So sorry,
streaming,
no, of course,
so
of
they know
course.
who's speaking.
Jen Tiso Garvey, Fairway Drive. So, say 50 people. For example, let's use a horrible tragedy that happened 2 years ago in 2020 of George Floyd. And we decide people are enraged and want to take to the green and go and express that and shout and not cause any damage, but maybe hold a sign, yada yada. And I guess what's to distinguish that we're an entire group and then thus we need a permit? What if just everybody flocked there? Or for example, after the Supreme Court leaked that they were going to be possibly overturning Roe v. Wade, people, myself included, went to the gazebo to be around like-minded people and get our frustration and do some chanting for an hour, and then we went home and I made dinner for my 2 kids and I went to sleep. So I guess I feel that the concern is like, when we're talking about an event, right? Let's say like the farmer's market or Pride. Pride was an event. Absolutely, we had tents, we had slime making, we had all these things. I get that. That needs a permit, 100%. But I feel that this law, and I know that I'm pushing this, but I feel that this law is a slippery slope when you're talking about First Amendment rights. And I'm just getting very frustrated.
And we already identified and acknowledged that, and we will be regrouping and looking at this. So we appreciate the comments. But I'm sorry, we kind of need to move on to the rest of our agenda, so I appreciate everybody coming out and letting us know, and the story is to be continued. So thank you.
Will there be another public hearing?
The public hearing is
I
remaining
understand
open.
that, it's open, but will there be another official public hearing?
Well, we're gonna have to see we'll have to see what transpires.
So you
with
have
everything.
decided, so there is a possibility that you're just keeping it open in order to
No.
get
No,
this remarks
that's
from the
not a
public?
possibility, Harvey.
Okay.
Okay.
The law can't be passed without another public hearing.
But I'm not talking about the law being passed, I'm talking about public comment being allowed.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what a public
Okay,
that's what a public hearing
that's
is.
fine, that's okay, fine.
Okay. All right, so can I have a motion to open the public hearing for the local law for reimbursement of expenses incurred by the Pawling Joint Sewer Commission in connection with the sewer connections?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, are there any comments regarding the sewer connection? Excuse me?
And when are we gonna have three?
Excuse me, we're still having a meeting.
Okay, so if no comments, have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then, can I have a motion to approve the seeker, which is seeker type 2?
Yeah. It's type
So
two, so no seeker,
No.
no seeker proceeding.
Okay, I knew
That's
there
the
was a-
resolution.
Okay, so we're all set.
Mhm.
So I just need to pass the resolution now. So do I have a motion to pass the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So now can I have a motion to adopt the local law regarding the expenses incurred by the sewer connections?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. New business. So before us, we have the resolution authorizing the application to the EFC for the Village of Pawling water supply, Lower Baxter well fields.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we did receive a letter from the town of Pawling asking if we would consider shared services for the sheriffs and for a building inspector. So I'm gonna speak to the building inspector situation in that when I became mayor, we had, our building inspector was stepping away for medical issues, and we needed to put something together, and so I feel like I've put something really good together for our building inspector. So basically we have Labella, and how I worked it out is that Labella works within the permit fees for someone doing work on their property, so it is not costing the village residents. So there are occasions, and it's very minimal, where we have to ask the building inspector or the code enforcement officer to apply their expertise other places where there is a small fee to the village residents. But on a whole, for the most part, there is no cost to the village residents. So, and by using Labella, we not only have a building inspector, we have a code enforcement officer who is also a PE, licensed PE, and that also comes with other staff as needed. So we have a great system. We're all very pleased with the way that that has been working for us. So even though we are always interested in shared services to reduce the costs for two municipalities, this is a scenario where it's not going to show any cost savings for us to move forward for that shared service. The board, I mean, how does everybody else feel? That's my feeling, so.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. So, regarding the building inspector, we're going to pass on this particular shared service request. Sheriff, Stan, can you?
The shared services for the sheriff's coverage, the Village of Pawling, for at least the last 60 years, has either had its own police force, or it, when the police force was dissolved, we engaged the sheriffs to cover portions of every day where we have absolute and direct coverage within the village. We've been doing this for at least 10 years that I'm aware of. We like this service. We feel it's needed in the populated area of the village. There doesn't appear to be any benefit to the village in sharing a service. We don't want to lose the service that we have. The only way for the town to engage in their own sheriff's coverage is to pay for it. So there's no advantage to the village whatsoever to enter into a shared service for this service.
Does everybody?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, we have the dedicated patrol for the village, they get
Right.
paid per hour.
Yep.
They're here for the hour.
And they're here.
And they're
not-
here.
They're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In fact, on my way to the meeting tonight, Lieutenant was walking down the sidewalk. He's visible. They're driving the village. They're walking the village. They have relationships with, the merchants and know the community. It's a presence that the community sees, and I think it's important, and I don't want to lose that. So,
And our office is right next door.
yeah, so I think just to satisfy all, I would like to make the motion that we let the town know that, where we're more than happy to entertain shared services, these two are not the ones that fit for us. So I'll make that motion.
And we do already engage in an awful lot of shared.
Yes, we do. We do have a lot of shared services with the town and other municipalities. So, so I'm gonna make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we have in our packet, Municipal Solutions amending the date regarding the water rate study. They had to do an increase because there's more work to be done on that. Does anybody have any questions regarding that?
No.
No.
Can I get a motion to approve that?
So moved.
No second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We also have Municipal Solutions proposal for the application for funding the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and Fiscal Services for Lower Baxter wells. Anybody have any questions regarding that?
No.
Nope. That's the grant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, they're gonna help with the financial end of it, yeah. So do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, update on parking enforcement. Dave, you wanna
Yeah.
give us an update on that?
So I think the only thing that remains to get this process off the ground would be to just come up with a list of or finalized list. It may be finalized, I'm not sure, but the violations that are gonna go on the ticket,
Okay.
which, there's a blank, so if you don't get them all, it doesn't, I should ask Lou, is that, maybe you have some ideas, but maybe you should take a look at the ticket, the draft, and that.
Lou has, and
Yeah,
we,
I just started working with Jennifer on that.
So if that's okay, I would recommend that we just send that to Dennis at FPS, because he can start, if we tell him.
we already sent it all to Dennis.
He has it?
Yeah.
Oh, does he know it's approved? I think all he knows.
Well, no, it's an amended draft, so I
Yeah,
guess.
so my point is that if we do approve it, he's off to the races, and then just come up with a fine schedule and.
My only concern, Dave, was that I sat down and took all the codes and put them into took all the lows and put them into the code.
Yes.
Our numbers are not right, so I don't know how to reference them on the ticket. We have to redo the whole section.
So can you work with Jennifer and
Absolutely.
fixing
I
that?
didn't know that's,
Yeah,
so that's good.
I think
so
we're
to
in a
keep it-
good spot, but
Yeah.
we need to.
No, that won't take long.
Okay.
We just we can do something really quick and then pass it at the next
Send it
meeting
over
and
to
get
them.
it. Yeah, great. And then just to sign off on the doubling of the fine and then the tripling and then maybe add another $20.
He sent us something.
Yeah, right.
that
And if
kind of
everybody's
did it for
okay
us.
with that, then that's kind of those are the two, I just talked to him tonight, actually, those are the two things he needs to be off to the races, and
So he needs us to approve that tonight, or?
No, we can, I mean, we could approve the, you know, we can do it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
What changes have to be made? You just
Well,
have to.
Just, I think what Jennifer, you know, I wasn't thinking about that, but the, you know, the numbering of the violations that are gonna go on the ticket, and the, do we need a number? Yeah, we do, we
Is there
do.
any
Well,
section in
right,
it?
Lou could write it.
Yes, it has to reference the local law.
Yeah, you could write it in though, right?
I can write it in, definitely,
Yeah,
yes.
So, but I think you're right, I think it should be
There's something
written
to-
and,
okay.
So why don't we get that all buttoned up and then,
Well, is there any urgency or no?
Well, I think,
we just,
yeah, if you're losing
wanna get
revenues.
back, we wanna
Losing
get back
revenues.
to parking enforcement. We
Yeah.
have not been enforcing the parking since December.
What I was saying is, can we approve it pending the change? Can we approve it? We already know what changes what things that you have, that you're going
Well,
to
if you-
do.
if you guys are okay
So
with it,
if we approve it tonight and you make the necessary changes, it can go to
Yeah,
Dennis.
and then you can ratify it at the next meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jen, is he gonna send us a draft of the ticket before we say print,
Yes.
print 1,000?
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah,
it's still
yeah,
an amended
exactly.
draft at
Yeah,
this point.
he's gonna do approve,
Per-
and then we
perfect.
can always change it if something comes up that we're not
Exactly.
happy with, and but at least let's get the ball rolling, get something out to him so we can, you know.
So I make a motion that we approve the changes that you will make, so it can be sent out and we will ratify it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, approve the Metro North Treasurer's Report as presented. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Dan Stone, you're up.
I'll try to be brief. We received, like I can't.
Yeah, I know.
We received 2 bids for the last contract that we need to actually build something at Omshide. One was improperly completed. We didn't have all of the necessary information to make a recommendation for award, so that was rejected just by me. The other one was proper, but it's about 4 times my estimate of the value of the work. And so I haven't reached out to that second contractor yet to see what they didn't understand about my plan, but I intend to do that. I would ask the board to reject both bids. I would also ask the board to consider authorizing us to go back out to bid after I've clarified for these 2 contractors and any other contractor that wants to bid on the project, the actual work that we're asking prices for.
So I make a motion that we reject these 2 bids and that, are you ready to put it back up?
Yes, we will present a ad to Jennifer on Wednesday. It will be published Friday. And then the bids will be due September 2nd for your consideration on the 7th.
Okay.
6th or 7th? 6th. 6th.
And I'll second it.
All right, so I make the motion that we reject the bids and that we authorize you to rebid it and.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're still pumping the one Umshide well that we put into emergency service almost 2 years ago now at 100 gallons a minute. We are carefully monitoring, because it's been so dry, the potential impacts or changes in water level that are required by the permit that DEC issued. When the elevation difference between 2 monitoring points hit 4 inches, we were obligated to look at the data every day and compute a 3-day running average of the differences. If it ever got to 2 inches, we're obligated under the permit to shut the well off. We're currently at 2.9, but that, we hit the 4 mark back in June, so it's just slowly going down. With occasionally you see a little uptick, with the rain or whatever. We're concerned, we're watching it, but there's nothing to do dramatically to shut down the well or even cut back on its flow. The standard in the permit is 2 inches. I will be evaluating that, and if we ever get to 2.5 inches, I think I will be making the recommendation that we cut back, not go to 0, but cut back on its use to blend with the other sources that we have. So operators look at it every day. We talk about it mostly every day, and we talk about it at our water board, our water meeting and wastewater meeting every Monday. So we're focused on it. The ROARS contract was executed today. So that is to horizontally drill underneath the wetland to connect the 2 3-inch pipes that we installed back in the winter under the wetland. We expect ROARS to mobilize next week and to very quickly prosecute that work. He doesn't see any issues in installing those pipes. We are continuing working with Municipal Solutions and Christine on water rates, and we've submitted an assessment of that to both Dan and Lori. Dave was good enough to give us the procedures that need to be followed, so when they're adopted consistent with New York State law. I've been tasked with tagging all of those procedures plus all of the work that we have to do to get the final rate instrument done and present that to you so that we have a plan. It is anticipated now that the new rates would not go into effect until the bills that will be generated in December. Lower Baxter design is about 50% complete. We're anticipating submitting to the Health Department early September for the plans that will be needed for Lower Baxter. We also anticipate submitting to DEC for the 2 permits that we'll need from them, water withdrawal and adjacent area disturbance, again in September. It is we will push, it is my hope we will have plans approved and permits in hand by December, which would allow us to do some of the work during the winter months and avoid all of the extra costs associated with the active species season. You previously authorized Municipal Solutions to assist with the WIA grant. That needs to go in September 9th, and everything is in place to do that, and you'll have one more resolution at your next meeting, but once that is passed, we'll be in shape to make that application. We think you're eligible for 60% of the Lower Baxter costs under that grant program. And low interest too, or assisted interest. And that's all I got.
Dan, just a quick question on the, for 2.5 inches for the Lower Baxter.
No.
I mean, I know, we all know what a dry season this has been. How does this compare to last season, the year before?
We're much drier than last season. Yeah. We never hit the 4-inch threshold where we had to actually watch it every day. It is declining still, but it's very, very slowly declining. If we got no rain for about another 40 days, we might hit that lower threshold. But at the interim threshold that I think we should set at 2.5, we got at least 20 days to get to that. So, we'll be telling you about it at every one of these meetings. It's part of the reason DEC pushed so strongly for the village to find another source of supply. And when that Lower Baxter source is in place, we can back off a little bit on Umscheid, not turn it off, but back off.
Right.
And then augment that with the high quality water from Lower Baxter. And
yep.
Between the two, we'll have you set.
Terrific.
Anything else? Everybody?
I have no
anything? Okay. All right, so can I get a motion to close the regular meeting and go into public comment?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Is there any public comment?
I have a comment. I think you're in a great meeting tonight. I think you articulated your intent perfectly. The fact that you're gonna, be open-minded and massage these local laws, I think is admirable. And I think in the end, your objectives will be met, and I certainly know what your objectives are. But for the people that do question you, I think in the end, you'll find out that it's for the betterment of the village. I think you guys did a great job. It was a very well-run meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so can I now have a motion to open executive session for litigation and contract negotiations?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
All right, when you're closing the public, you're closing the.
I make a
Well, I
motion.
closed the regular meeting,
Oh, you
public
did?
comment's not part of regular meeting.
Oh, right, you're right, sorry.
Good night, Dan.
Good night, Dan.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Good night. See you guys. Take care, Dave.
Every year.
We're going up for executive session.
Hey, Rob.
What do we?
Hey, Dan?
Dave.
This is detail, there's one thing that, there's a, with the green and the gold.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everybody's leaving. Oh, well, we're on live.
Yeah, we're streaming. And they're all up front, too.
Manufacturers of.
So nothing is stopping them.
I was just worried that somebody would walk in. No, I get it.
Good night now. Yes. And so, is that something that
we.
Jerry, can you keep the board down here on purpose? I don't know if you wanted an executive.
I do want it.
PFOS is the other one. It's a
Yeah.
fluoridated
I mean, is it worth, all I want to know, is it worth exploring?
It's,
We've already had a
you
long
know,
meeting.
it's like any other
Let's not
class.
make it
This is
longer.
part of the meeting.
Yeah, it's like any other class action, the return here.
Dan.
I'm out of here. I don't think there'll be a lot of benefit. Because Liddy has other problems, radiological, Corbin has supply problems, they were on track to be abated anyway, and the two new sources don't have PFOAs or I don't know about class action, but, yeah. Sure, absolutely. Yep. Okay.
Hey, John. Oh my gosh, it's so hot in here. Phew. I know, I think I made a couple of things, but nothing horrible, but thank you.
Usually with those kind of public hearings, there's a point.
Thank you, John.
See you, sir. Thank you.
All right, and I never get this right.
No, we don't.
You gotta
screw this
close.
up every time. Close the
Close the
executive
executive
session,
session
then
and
open
go
regular meeting,
and
and
go
then
back to
close
the regular meeting, yeah.
Gotcha.
I'll make a motion that we close the executive session. There was no, we didn't make any, no votes or decisions.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, can I have a motion to open up the regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And can I have a motion to close the regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
All right. Good night, thanks, Jen.
Alrighty, you're good.
I'll be in touch, Jennifer, about that.
Okay,